Thank you so much. I'm actually trying to rev myself down. I'm a little more revved up than probably I need to be. Actually, after that introduction, I think after Tova's talk, I feel like I need about 5 chairs. Maybe I could just stretch my weirdness out in front of you all. I'm going to need a clicker also. That'd be really great. Actually, I was going to say, actually, one of my bits of weirdness is I like to move around when I talk. And one of the hardest things was they asked me to stay within here and here. And I was like, I'm gonna try really hard for that. So just before I start, I'm gonna give a little stretch out. And honestly, if you guys want to join me for the next 20 seconds, feel free to make yourself comfortable if you need to stretch. That's kind of what I'm gonna do. Maybe a little stretch, a little bend. Awesome. All right, I feel better anyways. The eminent physicist Robert Oppenheimer once said, "It's perfectly obvious that the whole world is going to hell. The only possible chance that it might not is that we do not attempt to prevent it from doing so." I'm going to talk to you today about the only thing I feel that I'm actually qualified to talk to you about. It's my own experience. Now, that might not be the conventional post-secondary experience that you're used to hearing about, but I think where I've been has a lot to teach. I really want to share it with you. So I graduated high school 13 years ago, and I had no plan. What I did have was an interest in art, and I had some creative ability with things like painting, drawing, and screen printing. And I was fortunate enough when I was going through high school that I had an art instructor who recognized and encouraged me to use those abilities. So by the time I was graduating, I made an application to study communication arts at the Nova Scotia Community College campus in Cape Breton. Now, when I actually got into the program, it was a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I was used to having a lot of creative freedom, and all of a sudden, I had instructors who were trying to take my creative abilities and help me sharpen them into skills, but I wasn't ready to do it. So after about 2 months, I bailed. I quit school, and I also decided to leave Cape Breton. And that's the first time that I came here to Halifax. And my first experience with university was a bit of a fluke. I love this guy. I'd been working for a few months in the city, and I started to get kind of envious of my friends who were in university. So one day I actually just walked into St. Mary's and pretty much said, "Sign me up." Conversation went something like, "I really want to be in school." "Okay, what area of study would you actually be interested in?" "I don't know, I just really want to be in school." So about a half an hour later, we hammered out a schedule that included an introductory astronomy course, an 8 a.m. accounting class, and a few other pretty random selections that are what you get when you walk into a university and say, "Sign me up." So this was all well and good until I actually had to start showing up for these 8 a.m. accounting courses, and pretty soon was like sitting at my desk like, what the hell have I done with my life? So as you can imagine, it didn't last very long. After about 2 semesters, I lost all interest, and I just stopped showing up. I stayed around Halifax for a couple more months, but pretty soon I decided I was going to make a move. So I decided to make a move to Fort McMurray, Alberta, to work in the oil field. Now here is a place where I figured I don't need a formal education to get a good paying job. I figure I can get by on my personality, my work ethic, and that's all I would need. All I had to do was show up, do my work, and get paid. And I figured I could do that. I could do that really well. I could do that every day. So I did. 7 days a week, sometimes 14 hours a day, for months at a time. And I put away a lot of money. After I had about $60,000 in the bank, I was feeling pretty good about myself. So, like I've somehow skirted the system. Like I don't need to go to school to get a good paying job. But I started to get kind of curious, like how far can I stretch this like personality, this work ethic of mine? How far can these like kind of natural abilities of mine take me? So I wanted to know how far I could stretch them occupationally, definitely financially, but also geographically. So I took a job as a bartender on Baffin Island. Why would I go back to school when I could make over $100,000 a year slinging beer and making cocktails in the Arctic Circle? I couldn't convince myself that this was a bad idea. He doesn't look all that happy. But, so this is what I did for 3 years. And I thought I had it all. After a while, I had 2 homes, I had 2 vehicles, and I literally had all the freedom I could possibly imagine. I also had a pretty nasty cocaine habit. I had a relationship that was perpetually falling apart. And I had a serious tendency to lie to myself and other people about what was going on in my life. So it was around this time in my life I actually started to learn a few things. I started to learn maybe my personality and my work ethic can't always get me everything that I want. Maybe things like building relationships, that takes something else. So I started to learn that maybe talent doesn't equal skill. There's some things I'm going to have to work for. And I also started to learn that sometimes success can be much more dangerous than failure. So when I hit rock bottom with my drug habit, with my relationship, with my bank account, I decided to call it quits, and I decided to come back home. I decided to come back to the only place that's ever actually even felt like home for me, which is Halifax, Nova Scotia. I love this place. So I came back, Halifax. You've obviously all made a wise choice as well. So I came back, and I enrolled in classes again at St. Mary's. But it didn't last very long, because I just come from a place where I could sometimes make $1,000 a day. How could I convince myself to go back to school and invest, my time, my energy, my money in getting an education, formal education? Why would I do that? Couldn't convince myself. So when the opportunity came again for me to go to Alberta, I practically jumped at the chance. But this time around, I was going to hit Alberta with a vengeance. I decided I was going to work in the bar during the evening, and I was going to work on an oil rig during the daytime. I took the 2 highest paying jobs I had ever found, and I decided I was going to do them both at the same time. And I did pretty well for myself again. After about 8 months, I put about $80,000 in the bank. And again, pretty convinced, I don't need a formal education. By this time, I was pretty convinced I need a vacation. So I decided to take a 7-month trip through India and Southeast Asia with my girlfriend at the time. Now, I say at the time because our relationship didn't survive this vacation. A little piece of advice for you. If your relationship is on the rocks, don't take a 7-month trip to India and Southeast Asia with your partner. I don't recommend it. On the other hand, this trip showed me that I had a lot to learn about communication, setting goals, solving problems. And so when I came back to Canada, and eventually back again to Halifax, I realized I had some serious work to do. I realized I have to figure out how to be a better communicator, how to get in touch with my emotions, my motivations, my desires, my mind, my body, all these things. I had a lot of questions. And for the first time in my life, I was determined to answer them. So you kind of know how the story goes by now. I came back to Halifax, the old incubator that is Halifax. And I enrolled again, classes at St. Mary's. It's my go-to. They'll always have me. By the way, are there any dead language scholars in the room that want to take a crack at what this means? Shout it out if you know it. All right, well, a direct translation would be that it is solved by walking. Now, I take that to mean that life can be understood through practical experimentation and application of what you learn. Now, my process of experimentation eventually led me to apply to study painting at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design just this past summer. So in a lot of ways, it's like 13 years later, I was kind of right back where I started with this interest in studying art and communication. So it's almost like I'm right back where I came from. But for me, the value is in what I've learned in the process. I learned that talent does not equal skill. And there's some things in my life I'm actually going to have to work quite hard for. I also learned success can be much more dangerous than failure. This one was difficult for me. This took a long time. And I learned to invest in the process. I learned to invest in my own process. And it's investing in that process as a 5-time university dropout that has brought me onto this stage today to talk to you about the future of education. Go figure. So if I was to leave you with any words of advice, they would just be to trust in your own process, whatever that is. So if your process takes you to university, that's great. If your process takes you traveling, more power to you. If your process takes you to Baffin Island and asks you to bartend for 3 years, God help you. But hey, do what you got to do. Thank you.